Welcome everyone to the October 4th meeting, and a special welcome to the students that are here from Dalhousie University and St. Mary's University, as well as members of the community. So the Halifax Center of the RASC respectfully acknowledges that we live and observe on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And RASC believes in and practices inclusivity and diversity. Halifax Center welcomes all with an interest in astronomy and without prejudice. So today's meeting, following the photo montage, we have a presentation by a special guest, Dr. Sara Seager, and Paul Gray will introduce Dr. Seager. Then we'll have a social break, followed by some comments about outreach opportunities, Food for the Soul by Paul Heath, some news from the board by Judy Black, and end off with what's up in the October sky. Okay, so the skies in September were a little more favorable towards imaging, so we have some nice images to look at. And the first one's from Jerry Black. The Bubble Nebula shown here, and as an added bonus, we have a nice open star cluster, Messier 52. And Jerry also spent some time on the Crescent Nebula and also captured the soap bubble, which, where is it, Jerry? Is it out there?
No.
Oh, there.
Oh, there.
Right there, right?
Yeah.
So that's a tough one. And the Eagle Nebula, Messier 16, also from Jerry, and the Trifid Nebula, along with Messier 21, open cluster. I think it's also known as Webb's Cross. And again from Jerry, the Lagoon Nebula in Sagittarius. So lots of nice nebula from Jerry. Now we have a image of the comet that's currently in the morning sky and may actually be unaided eye visible by the middle of October. This is from Jeff Donaldson on the 29th of September. And
could I interrupt you for just a second?
Yes.
We're not showing
this is Comet C 2025A6 from Jeff Donaldson, and Jeff mentioned that it took him 12 hours to process the subs for this particular image. So
it's reached binocular visibility.
yeah, a couple mornings ago, I thought I could see it from the city with binoculars, but it was pretty iffy. I imagine if you're out in the country.
Well, Mike said yesterday, I think, was that he got it in his binoculars.
Okay. Yep. So if you're up at 5 o'clock, 5:30,
That late?
yep, have a look for it. It's fairly high in the sky. It's around 30 degrees or so. And also from Jeff, the Flaming Star Nebula. So Jeff has gone jumped both feet into mono imaging, and this is a hydrogen, alpha, oxygen, sulfur image. And the Helix Nebula in Aquarius, also from Jeff. And the Elephant's Trunk Nebula, IC 1396, using the Hubble palette from Jeff. Tim Doucette posted this shot of a meteor, and very bright one, and just off to one side you can see the Pleiades. Paul Gray, this is again another one of the Trifid Nebula, Messier 20, and this is a reworking, right, Paul, of Now, if any of you remember, Paul had this image on the Observer's Handbook a few years back, and now he's reworked it. Looks really nice. Lots of faint wisps of nebulosity there. And also from Paul Gray, NGC 7331, and right here, lovely resolution in the spiral arms, and lots of small neighboring galaxies in the image. Okay, I captured this shot of the waxing gibbous moon early in the month. And in the 1st of September, this is what the sun looked like with a white light filter, lots of sunspots. And Messier 22, the Sagittarius cluster, captured from the St. Croix Observatory. And Messier 16, the Eagle Nebula, also captured from the St. Croix Observatory. And that's it for my shots. Now some from Blair McDonald. Nice shot of the double cluster from Blair. Another nice galaxy, NGC 474. It's an amazing look, galaxy. And companions, you can find these galaxies in Pisces. The Lobster Claw Nebula from Blair, Sharpless 157. And Sharpless 115, and nice Planetary Nebula. Right here, I think. Abel 71, also from Blair. Tom McIntyre posted this shot of the Pac-Man Nebula. And also from Tom, Messier 33, Triangulum Galaxy, and Messier 45, the Seven Sisters. Kathy Walker has got back into imaging following her move and now getting the observatory set up. And this is the Cave Nebula. And last but not least, another shot of the Pac-Man Nebula in Cassiopeia from Kathy Walker. Okay, so lots of nice images from the past month. And now we'll move on to our special presentation. So Paul, can you ready to come up for introduction, Paul?
Whew. This has been over a year in the planning, and I'm glad to say we're finally here. I have often talked about the virtues of the great things of the RASC. I know Dave Chapman has done this. Judy often, I think every meeting, goes on about how great this society is and what the RASC can do for you, from learning from others, meeting amazing scientists and speakers, amateurs and professionals alike. And I often tell people, if you stick around here long enough, you're going to meet some amazing folks over the years. Just for a fact, I noticed on Zoomland, we have Alan Dyer viewing today. Hi, Alan. It's been a while since we spoke, but Alan's a great author and one of the greatest astrophotographers in the country. And here he is just dropping in to join us. But we're here for somebody else. We're here to see someone else. Meeting people in the society is a great thing. I have met many friends through the society, and like I said, many scientists and amazing speakers and amazing researchers. One of those friends was here earlier, has now left, Charles Darrow. Known Charles for over 20-something years. And as he could tell you, not only do you meet friends at the RASC, but sometimes you even meet a future spouse. And if you want to ask about that, during questions, poke Sarah. We're here to hear Sarah, though. So Dr. Sara Seager, I had the privilege to hear her speak a couple times and have dinner with her and get to know her a bit. It's amazing. She is a Professor of Physics, Professor of Planetary Science, Professor of Aeronautics and Astronautics, all at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. She currently holds the class of 1941 professor chair. She originally graduated from Toronto, University of Toronto, with a bachelor's in math and physics specialist program back in 1999. She has been a pioneer in the vast and unknown world of exoplanets. Planets around other stars. Easiest way to sum that up. Her groundbreaking research ranges from the detection of exoplanet atmospheres, not just the detection of the planets, but the actual atmospheres in those planets, to innovative theories about life on other worlds, and development of novel space missions and concepts to explore those. In space missions, she was the Deputy Science Director of the MIT-led NASA Explorer class mission, TASS, which we may hear about, I don't know, we'll see. She was the principal investigator of the JPL-MIT CubeSat Asteria, is a lead on the Starshade Rendezvous mission, which is a space-based mission to direct image an exoplanet around another star. She mostly recently, from what research I could find, has directed a mission concept study to find signs of life or life itself in the atmosphere of Venus. She's also an author, having written a memoir, The Smallest Lights in the Universe, which I'm looking forward to reading because I just found out about that. A few of the more than dozen, and I could have printed off pages of awards and recognitions that she has received include the MacArthur Genius Grant, membership in the U.S. National Academy of Sciences, the Sackler Prize in Physical Sciences, the Magellanic Premium Medal, closer to home, the Royal Canadian Geographical Society Gold Medal, and is also an officer of the Order of Canada. Lastly, she is also our national honorary president, which helps bring her here today. I would like to introduce Dr. Sara Seager. Welcome, glad to have you.
5 years ago, I was part of a team that made a very controversial discovery. This discovery was the report of the presence of phosphine gas in the atmosphere of Venus. How many of you have heard of that and remember it? We'll come back to that later. But to make discoveries, you have to take a risk. Sometimes it pans out, sometimes it doesn't. And that's my invitation to you today. To innovate, we have to try new things. So let me take you on a journey of scientific discovery. So I need to pull my talk up here. So give me one moment. And can everyone on Zoom see it? Yes, okay, great. So I think most of you, well, this story begins not today and not last year, not with the launch of the James Webb, but it begins billions of years ago when a simple single-celled bacteria, cyanobacteria, first discovered something very clever. Now, I don't know about you, but I never think of bacteria as that clever. You know, they can take over your fridge. Maybe that is clever. But back in the old days, this bacteria, cyanobacteria, figured out how to harness energy from our environment. That is pretty clever. And in the process, they produce oxygen, a waste gas. Now, initially, this waste gas from photosynthesis, it actually killed a lot of life on Earth because it's poisonous to a lot of life. But eventually, over another, say, billion of years, it started to accumulate in our atmosphere. And we need oxygen, but without life, without photosynthetic bacteria and mostly vegetation, we would have no oxygen. Okay, so it's so reactive, it shouldn't be there. And so that's one of our signs of life. We think we're a sign of life to alien civilizations. And in fact, nearly 100 years ago, an astronomer, James Jeans, he wrote in a textbook that oxygen should be considered a sign of life. And he looked for oxygen with his telescope on Venus. Like he had a telescope on Earth with a spectrograph. He looked for oxygen. He didn't find it, but put a pin on that for a moment. And he just said, okay, there's an upper limit to oxygen on Venus. That was just a few paragraphs in a textbook. But today, that is the way we're trying to find signs of life on an exoplanet. We're trying to look for gases like oxygen that don't belong, that are so reactive they shouldn't be there. And that's how we're trying to find signs of life. So some of you knew that already, but when you look at the stars, I hope you also wonder what's out there, who might be out there. I love to imagine a planet orbiting a nearby star. I want to know who else does this. When I look at the stars, I'm hoping there's someone out there looking back at us. And I actually specifically hope they have the telescopes we're trying to build, like Starshade, like others. And I'm hoping that they see oxygen, because that's how they're going to recognize there might be life here. It's not from, as you know, right, pollution or city lights or big things like the Great Wall of China. It's literally from a gas like oxygen. But right now, in terms of exoplanets, there are thousands of exoplanets in our galaxy that we know about, and there's probably trillions in our galaxy alone. I just wanted to put a point on this, that we have, I think it's fair to say, we have not found any solar system copies yet. We think they're out there, they're just not incredibly common, and they're hard to find with any technique we have at hand right now. But instead, we have all kinds of other crazy planets, and I hope to touch on some of those today. But what I am here to talk about I'm going to talk about exoplanet atmospheres, going to talk about Venus and new telescope and computer code paradigms. And I do have the three frontiers in the search for signs of life. They are a bit buried, so you can pay attention to what you think they are. And at the end of the talk, I will circle back to what they are. We will start with transiting planets. Has anyone here ever observed one, a light curve with your telescope? Or I know students here, even for more than a decade, have done this. This artist's conception on the top is showing you a planet going in front of its star as seen in an artist's conception. We don't see any stars like that other than our sun. That's just an artist's conception. What we measure is on the bottom. We measure the brightness of a star as a function of time. And we look for a drop in brightness to show that in case there's a planet that just is fortuitously aligned. It's not like winning the lottery, but it's still very rare. If the planet goes in front of the star, as seen from your viewpoint, you will see a drop in brightness. And there's I would say, it's fair to say there's a transit happening in the Northern Hemisphere every night, right? At least one, so students can observe them. It can be like every undergraduate institution in North America that has the right kind of telescope can actually measure one of these, provided the weather is good enough. And so this is kind of this actually is the main way we discover planets today. If we were here 15 years ago or 15 years in the future, it won't be the main way, but it is right now. So I'm assuming that like more than half of you already know what this is. You've already heard about this. And if you haven't, just hopefully it all made sense, because we're going to the next level right now. Now, one interesting thing, if you look at this, right, the artist made that curve at the bottom, and you see how it's all very jagged? That's to represent noise from your camera, noise from your CCD detector, noise from the star. But this is a real transit. It's so perfect. It really should be the opposite. In real life, things are messy. They're noisy. The data is crummy. But this data of this transit is taken with the James Webb Space Telescope. It's effectively 6.5 meter mirror telescope. It's out at L2. It's a wonderful, wonderful telescope. So this is relative brightness. So in astronomy, you know, we love to normalize things. So this is just showing you 100. The star is just doing its thing as a function of time, just shining brightly. And in this case, a giant planet went in front of the star and the starlight dropped. And then when it's finished transiting, it goes back to normal. And this is the area ratio of the planet to star area ratio. And it's just such a gorgeous, gorgeous light curve. But we're here to talk about something a little more complicated. And if you look at, again, the artist's conception on the top, you see the dark disk of the planet, and you see the fake extended atmosphere in gray. All right. So what we're supposed to get by this picture is that if there's a planet atmosphere, the planet looks a little bit bigger. And if the planet is bigger, it will cause a deeper drop in brightness. Okay, are you all with me on that? I'm actually co-teaching a class this year. So I sometimes sit in the audience now, and I see how like fast things go by, and I'm like, wow. So just really want you to understand what I'm talking about, because this is going to be, this is like part of the whole way we study atmospheres today. So I want you to imagine a planet atmosphere now, and it's different molecules and gases absorb at different wavelengths, all right? So imagine where the atmosphere is transparent, like today. We can see the blue sky, right? At night, we will see the stars. There's no atmosphere absorbing. at that wavelength if there's no clouds. So what would this light curve look like? Well, it would be the dark part of that disk compared to the whole part of the star. That would be the area ratio. Now I want you to imagine a wavelength where the atmosphere is strongly absorbing. Now, is the planet a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller? Bigger. The planet's a little bit bigger. So now the drop in brightness will be more. So effectively, to see an atmosphere, we are looking for a change in that drop in brightness as a function of wavelength. Okay, so whether or not you understood what I said, we're going to try it. Now you're seeing the relative brightness of the star. It's normalized to 1, not 100, but same thing, 1. And now you can see at the bottom, now it's time from mid-transit in days. So don't worry too much about the units. You're looking at the black curve, and the black curve is the best fit to the average. Okay, so the black curve is the transit reference. And you're supposed to be looking at these points, which are colors. They're representing different wavelengths. And you're supposed to see if you can tell if there's a wavelength where the transit looks a little bit bigger, meaning the atmosphere is making the planet a little bit bigger. Now, if you can coordinate your eyes enough, in the top right, you can see wavelength by W, and this is in microns because it's the James Webb Space Telescope in the infrared. So when you can coordinate, just shout out what wavelength you think it is where you see a drop.
4.5.
And believe it, there's more than one right answer because it's a band. So I heard a 4.5. I just want to make sure everyone sees that drop. Wow, let's let this land. By eye, you have seen evidence for an exoplanet atmosphere. What an amazing time to be alive for astronomy. Yeah. So that is definitely the case. This is actually a giant planet. It's a hot, puffy planet. And that wavelength corresponds to carbon dioxide, where we know from the news on Earth, we know carbon dioxide is a very strong absorber. We're worried about parts per million increase. So it's a super strong absorber. It's not the dominant form of carbon in this planet atmosphere, but it's just like a skunk smell. A little bit can go a long way depending on the gas. So I have a couple more complicated slides. I just want you to know what we do with this data. But we'll literally fit this curve and measure the drop in brightness. So now I'm going to switch to an axis that is the amount of light blocked. And it's no longer a function of time, it's a function of wavelength now, or color like in the last one. So imagine if you had to measure that drop in brightness with your computer, and each one of these is a point from that data, and it also has an uncertainty associated with it. You might have noticed sometimes the dots spread out a bit, there's more noise. So what you're seeing here is wavelength at the bottom, and if you guessed 4.2 or 4.4 or 4.5, you are correct, because this is showing you that the planet looks a little bit bigger at the wavelengths where between, say, 4.2 and 4.5. So if you don't understand this graph and how it relates, not to worry. You just have to agree with me this is different from a straight line. And this is associated with the gas carbon dioxide. So that is, I wanted you to know about this. I wanted you to understand the main way we find exoplanet atmospheres today. And I know it's very non-Canadian of me to say this, but the reason why I have all those awards is I invented this technique. So let us keep going. Now it's like a longer wavelength bin. So we're going from 0.5 to 5 microns right now. And on the left, you can see amount of light blocked. So you see it's not just carbon dioxide we can see in an atmosphere right now. All those ups and downs are different gases. And there's some listed here: sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, water. These are for giant planets I'm talking about. They're not small planets where we would find signs of life. The water's not because of a water ocean, but I wanted you to see like the quality of data we're getting. And if you wanted to know how we interpret the atmosphere, I'm going to say a few words about it later, but it's like not only a giant mess, but it's like a PhD level to explain all the nuances. So I do have something on it a little bit later because I know you're a more sophisticated audience. So I want to make sure I give everyone something. But for now, I just wanted to go over, I guess, the math, let's say, in a simple way. But here's a picture of our sun, a real image. And can you see the fake Earth on there? Well, the Earth's atmosphere is tiny. It's like the skin of an onion on an onion. And you're not, I know you're not a class, I can't assign you homework, But one of the homework problems is to estimate the drop in brightness from Earth's atmosphere, compare, what would it be? And it would be the area of that annulus, the ring around Earth that is its atmosphere, compared to the whole star. In fact, I think the answer is right there. That's less than 1 part in a million. And for the transits, we're measuring like a part per 1,000 or maybe a part per 10,000. It's too far. We cannot study Earth atmospheres right now with this method. So when we think about studying exoplanet atmospheres, it's not Earth, it's other things, it's giant planets. We have some other things. We have planets we call sub-Neptunes. Has anyone heard of sub-Neptunes in K18, K218b? We have these sub-Neptune planets. We have small planets. Well, these sub-Neptunes, let me just tell you a tiny bit about these sub-Neptunes. They are between the size of Earth and Neptune. It's not a very inventive name, a sub-Neptune, sub-Neptune-sized exoplanet. It's about 2 times the size of Earth, where Neptune is 4 times the size. And we have no solar system counterpart, yet these planets appear to be the most common in our galaxy so far that we can find. So we're not sure what they're made of. We don't know really how they formed. And this is kind of like big business right now at the frontier of exoplanets, because they're bigger than Earth. They have puffy atmospheres. We can study them with the James Webb. And so they're kind of one of the main games in town right now. But we're really not sure what they are. I just kind of put this picture up for one kind of interpretation. But I'd like to tell you why it's so hard. Let's imagine that I bring a box and I give you the box, and you have to guess what is inside this box. And I give you 3 choices of common planetary materials. One's a rock iron mix, one is water, and one is hydrogen helium mix. So if I give you the box, and you almost practically drop it to the floor in an instant. It's so heavy. What do you think is in that box? The iron and rock. Now, if I give you the box and it floats away, well, we've all seen that happen to us or our children or grandchildren, or right? Children do it, right? What is in the box? Now I give you a box and it's very average. It is just so average. No, it's not water. It's not water. Water's pretty heavy, right? What is in the box? Okay, but what kind of mix? No, it turns out you can never really figure out what the mixture is. Okay, because think about it. We can have some hydrogen, helium, and rock. We can have some rock, some water, some hydrogen, helium. In fact, we do incredibly detailed calculations to give you the whole range of possibilities of what could be in there. And it's never satisfying. And these sub-Neptunes, they just happen to be so average in density, it's very hard for us to tell what they're made of. And so right now, kind of like the latest frontier in this field, is trying to find out what they're made of by looking at their atmosphere. And it's kind of a hope that we'll be able to deliver on that. It's been very tricky to do that. I'll give you an example. It turns out ammonia is very soluble in water, and methane is not so soluble. So if you have a hydrogen-rich atmosphere, you expect to have methane, CH4, you expect to have ammonia, NH3. And if you see ammonia, but if you do not see ammonia, but you see methane, you might argue there's a liquid water ocean on there. It's not really that straightforward, but I'm just giving you like a little, an example, because we later found out that nitrogen compounds are also soluble in magma. And some people think these sub-Neptunes have a massive hydrogen-helium atmosphere that acts like a giant greenhouse, and that they have like a magma ocean, not a water ocean. And that could also dissolve the nitrogen compounds. So if that's confusing, it is, but I just wanted to give you a flavor of where the field is at. And some people are holding out that maybe some of these sub-Neptunes have water oceans, and maybe there could be life on them, but we're really not sure. Back to a more traditional planet, we have very small stars out there. You know how small stars, red dwarfs, they're the most common type of star out there. And some people have taken a real interest in the very smallest stars. Any smaller and colder, they wouldn't be able to have fusion and they wouldn't be stars. And there's a star called TRAPPIST-1. Anyone heard of TRAPPIST-1? It's a very popular star. And this kind of one is all the rage right now, because if you look at the number, if you're a numbers person and you read the numbers at the bottom, atmosphere to star is 1 part in 10,000. And everything's easier because we're looking at the planet going in front of the star. We're looking for the drop in brightness, which will be bigger. And I think you can even see it by eye. When you look at the same planet on the far left and the far right, it's the same planet copied and paste. And you see it takes out a much bigger area of the small star. So everything's easier. It's where we want to go. I'm part of a team that recently published a paper on TRAPPIST-1e and its atmosphere. And we did not find anything significant in the atmosphere. And I'm going to tell you, and that was kind of like the hope for, say, 5 or 10 years. That TRAPPIST-1e was like our favorite habitable zone planet. We ended up not finding anything because of all the star spots and some contamination there. Well, let me tell you a little bit about TRAPPIST-1e, or planets around these red dwarf stars, because it's a very different environment than we have here on Earth. You think about a small star, and the small star, hold on a second, I'm just going to do a little housekeeping here. The small star, here's an artist's conception okay, let's take a little mini mental break and go on a virtual trip to a planet orbiting a small red dwarf star, a habitable planet. Because these small stars give out such little energy, the planet would have to be very close to the star in order to be the right temperature for life. And this artist has made an artist conception. Okay, right. So I just wanted you to know what it might be like on this planet. Well, first of all, the star might be very big in the sky. That one's a little too big. But you'd be so close to your star, even with a smaller star, it would be big in the sky. This artist took the artist license to make the sky look different and the clouds, and you'd have other planets if you're in the TRAPPIST system in your sky. Now, what's really interesting about being so close to the star, and this is really key for astronomers, is that due to tides over millions and billions of years, the planet would land in a very favorable energy state, tidally locked. Just like the moon shows the same face to Earth at all time, the planet would rotate 1 time for every time it orbits. So it would be showing its same face to its star at all times. This means if we could imagine a virtual visit, would you go where it's always day? No, no, no. You go to where it's always night, being an astronomer. Okay, and you know how sometimes your favorite object in the sky, you might miss it because it's cloudy, or you only have like a little hole in your trees in your backyard? Well, don't worry, because a year is only about 10 to 30 days. So you'd cycle back to that part of the sky pretty quickly if you miss your object. I personally would want to go where the sun is always setting, but they would have to call it something else, right? Because it wouldn't be setting. It would the sun, the star would always be in the same place in the sky at all times. Being tidally locked, that's what would happen. So imagine if you could go where the green flash would like literally be happening, maybe not forever, but you'd have a lot of chances. Now, once I gave that part of the talk to professionals, and someone got really angry with me because, do you know how the moon librates? Like if you take a picture of the full moon over and over again, you see a little bit more than full, because sometimes it's just slightly like this, sometimes it's slightly like that. Right? So basically, yeah, this planet would probably have a little bit of libration, but I like to think that you could, wow, this would be crazy. I bet someone's giving a talk on a planet like that, and they're saying, hey, you know Earth? It's so crazy. It has day and night, it has seasons. It's like, how would you even do astronomy? Because your objects go away and you don't get them for another year. It's pretty crazy. But thinking about visiting one of these planets, even the thought of visiting it, it's a terrible thought. Because these M dwarf stars give off flares, they give off coronal mass ejections, and you wouldn't even know what kind of sunscreen to wear, or you couldn't be attached to your phone because those high energy particles would constantly knock out the electronics. Now, has anyone here heard of the Carrington event? Yeah, we're sort of overdue for another one. Maybe you've heard that. That's what happened around about the 1840s when Carrington, a British astronomer, was studying sunspots, and these sunspots brightened. And a day and a half later, our Earth became electrified. What happened was people didn't really understand sunspots or the magnetic field. Maxwell's equations weren't written down yet, but our sun had a giant coronal mass ejection, and it came hurtling towards Earth. And embedded in this, miniature mass of our sun was a magnetic field. And for any students, or if you've taken physics, when a magnetic field moves into another magnetic field, it induces a current. And so we didn't have the electrical grid back then, but telegraph wires caught fire. People could use the telegraph without batteries. And who remembers in the late 1980s when we had that outage? Yeah. Yeah, my brother lived in Ottawa at the time, and he literally had no power for like 2 months in the winter. So supposedly in Canada, we've got the equivalent of circuit breakers on our transformers. I don't know if that's true. I just heard that. But there's other places that don't have it. So people are kind of, I don't know. But I'll tell you one thing is that we know that it's, this is a satellite view of our sun giving off a flare and a coronal mass ejection. And all I know is that these M-dwarf stars have rapid, violent outcomes. And the TRAPPIST-1 system appears to have a Carrington-level event like every couple months. It may not hit the planet, but remember, planets are much closer to their star if they're in the habitable zone of a small star, and they're more likely to be in the line of fire. So I do like to think of here, I don't know if you get snow days anymore here, because I know when I read it, really? Okay. Not often, right? Because it's been warming up. We didn't have any snow days this year. But the funny thing is, living in the US, because I live in the Boston area right now, when we get a giant nor'easter, on the news, it'll be like, we have this nor'easter, it's going to hit us, it's going to go to Maine, it's going to go out to sea. But that just means like New Brunswick, Nova Scotia. It kind of cuts off at the border. Yeah.
Call that Wednesday.
Yeah. So I really like to think of on these TRAPPIST planets, they may not have snow days, but perhaps they have radiation days. They get a giant flare and you're told, look, don't go outside for a week until it dissipates. You go into your basement in your special radiation room. I mean, it's got to be a really serious problem. But in all seriousness, I do have some more technical slides for those who are ready for it. You don't have to understand this to understand the rest of the talk. But I wanted to explain to you why the flares, the spots are such a huge problem for us. It's ruining our current attempt to find signs of life, to find gases in the TRAPPIST planets and others if they have atmospheres. Now, this looks like transit depth as a function of wavelength. And before I told you that the planet changes size as a function of wavelength based on whether its atmosphere is strongly absorbing. Do you remember that? We're going to pretend now there's a planet with no atmosphere because we think there are lots of planets with no atmosphere. And in this picture, you still see an up and down. And the reason now is because the star is not a homogeneous uniform object. The star has spots, and those spots also have a wavelength dependence. So the spot appears to be a different size at different wavelengths. Okay, so if your planet has no atmosphere, you're still getting an up and down because effectively you have your numerators, your planet, the denominator is the star. If the star is changing size, apparent size, the whole thing appears to have an up and down. Okay, so if you didn't understand that, just look at the picture. It's showing the star spot on the top at one wavelength, the star spot on the bottom picture at another wavelength. It's different. It looks different. It has its own spectrum that changes. So its flux changes with wavelength. And now we have a problem because if the star has a signature like that, our planet has this signature, they're combined. So we have the star changing apparent size, we have the planet changing apparent size, it's all jumbled together. And this is kind of a big, big frontier in exoplanets now is how to disentangle these. And just in case anyone is still with me on this, I just want to tell you the most clever way that I've heard. I get to be a part of this team. I'm not in charge of this team. It's to take the TRAPPIST system that has, remember, 7 planets. We think the closest planets have no atmosphere. So we can take we can measure this because we can measure the transit during one with no atmosphere. And if you time it right, like a couple of hours later, a planet that we think has an atmosphere will go by. So we know the background contamination. And then we measure the combined, and we totally can subtract them to get this middle one. Now, I get that was a little complicated and went fast, but I just wanted to give something a little more complicated for the technical people in the audience so you could understand where we're at right now. And I do have one more complicated thing. Again, for the people, if there's any students in the room or people who do this, I have a little cartoon here on the far left. This whole row is about our expectation. We have a transiting planet, we have a telescope, and we get data, these points here, that we've talked about, the transit depth, the planet's changing size as a function of wavelength, and we fit a model to it. One molecule is this green one. It's a sign of life, according to this cartoon. One is the blue one. It's just some other background gas. And in our computer codes, we could have a probability for the different gases. So this is just some complicated stuff. Usually I show this to my peers and like a technical audience. If all goes well, we want to find a sign of life. So our expectation is we get data, we make models, we fit the data, we tell you approximately how much gases there could be, and we interpret it. But in real life, it's far more complicated. If you look at our star, it's spotted. I was telling you the stars have spots and flares and a whole bunch of phenomena we're uncovering for the first time. So our data is not very nice. And if you look at this data here, it's got bigger error bars than the ideal case. And our models don't always work. They don't always fit the data very well. But the take home for you is that if we had 3 scientists, they may have a different interpretation of the same data. And one scientist says, hey, I found an alien or sign of life. One says, hey, it's a boring, regular mini Neptune. Another might say, well, I found nothing. I could draw a straight line through this data. So we have a lot going on in the field, a lot of things we have to do. But I wanted to give you a couple things like right at the frontier of searching for signs of life with the James Webb. So I'm going to move on now. And hopefully you can digest all that. I gave you a lot of new things, but I wanted you to have some new things because I wanted to move on to gases. You know, we have oxygen that we require. That's our best biosignature gas on Earth. But it turns out that we've only had significant atmosphere accumulating in our atmosphere for the oxygen for the past billion years. But there's so many other gases out there. I'm going to tell you about my favorite gas, which you might not be surprised. Phosphine. Why is this my favorite? You know, on Earth, our phosphorus, P, it wants to go with O, not with H. So we have phosphates, we don't have phosphine. Only the tiniest amount of phosphine is around, but it's associated with life. Either we make it as pesticides, or it's found in like oxygen-free environments like wetlands. So I think phosphine is an amazing gas. It has like a unique spectral feature, few to no false positives. I really hope we find it on an exoplanet one day. You know, on Earth and Venus alike, we have almost no hydrogen, or our hydrogen's locked away in water, so it's a really good gas. Okay, so I'm going to just here summarize for a moment. We have an established method to observe atmospheres using the transiting planets. I'm sure I've convinced you of that. We all saw it by eye. We are there. We have some rocky planets in their habitable zone. We talked about TRAPPIST. There are, let's say, a dozen or so that we think are observationally accessible right now. And we have gases. We not just have oxygen and phosphine, but there's so many other gases out there. And this is kind of where we've been. I don't know what you think, but when I lay all this out like this, it sounds like we just have to solve the flares and the stellar variability and spots. We have to make our models a bit better, but honestly, the whole world wants us to find a sign of life. So I now have to tell you a tiny bit about phosphine on Venus, because this is like a test case. It's like a view of our future. And what happened was my team was working on phosphine just in our computer models for exoplanets when we learned about another team working on phosphine, trying to find a sign of life on Venus. Now, this is pretty remarkable because it's such an obscure gas. Maybe you don't expect astronomers to have heard of it before. And so Professor Jane Greaves in the UK was working on phosphine as a sign of life on Venus, and she found that it has a radio signature at the wavelength where ALMA and the JCMT can work, and she invited us to be part of her team. So we joined her team, and we helped interpret, if there is phosphine, what does it mean? And what do you think happened when we made this announcement in the fall of 2020? This was incredibly controversial. We said we reported phosphine at the parts per billion level in the atmosphere. We said out of all the ways anyone could think of, volcanoes, lightning, meteoritic delivery, lots of ways that phosphine couldn't be produced in high enough quantities to match that part per billion in the atmosphere. And we closed off with, this leaves room for there being life. Room. And we didn't say there's life, we said there's room. Just like, remember, 100 years ago, Professor or astronomer James Jeans first set that idea out for us. And we thought it was like a very straightforward thing. We're not saying there's life there. We're just saying, hey, we followed all the rules. We did it all. But the community was like livid, angry. People just got way bent out of shape. We'd have people writing to us or blasting an email group. Everybody knows there's phosphine on Jupiter and Saturn. Well, we know that, but hey, Jupiter and Saturn are mostly hydrogen. So P wants to go with H. Plus, they're really hot right beneath their atmosphere, hot enough with high enough pressure that phosphine wants to form. And people would be, I'd get an email from like a professor, who knows from where, New York, I guess, being like, well, I read the New York Times article. What about, and then they list off like a reaction that you can read about on Wikipedia. And like, how about this making phosphine? And so I didn't respond. And they're like, well, how come, a week later, how come you haven't responded? Well, I'm like, you know, if someone just reads, if you're not going to read the actual published article, then I'm not going to respond, right? So then I just said, look, that reaction requires a lot of hot water, and Venus' atmosphere does not have a lot of hot water. Anyway, this whole thing went back and forth, and it's still ongoing, although most people do not believe it is real. But I want you to understand the 3 legit criticisms. For any sign of life, is the signal real? Well, the data is all public, and the large majority of astronomers who looked at the data did not recover the phosphine signal. Some did, most didn't. Let's agree and imagine and assume that the signal is real. Then we have to ask ourselves, is the molecule correctly identified as phosphine? And you know, people want to disagree with that as well. Usually in the radio, there's not too much overlap, but it could be, there's a line of sulfur dioxide. We don't think it's sulfur dioxide because near simultaneous observations of sulfur dioxide at a different wavelength, it's not corroborating. Now, if the first 2 are correct, let's assume the signal's real, it is phosphine, then the question is the molecule from life or is it from non-life? That's a really hard question to answer. I don't think we can answer it for Venus or for an exoplanet. So that's tough. So I just want to leave this thought with you for a moment. Can we ever claim a robust discovery of exoplanet signs of life? I kind of rushed through that part, but it's tough now. If we went through this Venus exercise and no one believes it for a variety of reasons. Okay. You can mull that over in the background. We'll take a mini mental break. And why am I doing this? Because I had to take a mental break from my whole career on this because I worked my whole life. As are a growing number of exoplanet astronomers. I had to take a break because it's like, whoa. So we're going to take that mental break together, and we're going to talk about Venus. And I'm sure most of you have heard that Venus, it's too hot for life. Surface is too hot due to a massive carbon dioxide greenhouse atmosphere. Well, I can tell you one thing is that just like on Earth, when you hike up a mountain or go in an airplane, it gets colder and colder. And that's true also on Venus. So 50 kilometers above the surface, it's the right temperature for life. And that's why we think half a century ago, Carl Sagan first put out the idea that maybe there's life in the clouds, permanently located in the clouds. On Earth, we have life in our clouds, temporarily. We don't think it wants to be there, but it's there. This all sounds great until you also try to remember that the clouds aren't made of water. They're made of concentrated sulfuric acid. Now, how many of you have ever got to use concentrated sulfuric acid? You know, it's a funny question. And I have to say, like, there is a bit of a generational gap in this because when you ask young people that, like, they've never heard of it. Because, you know, they keep all the rules today. You have to wear your seatbelt. You know, in the old days, kids just didn't have a seatbelt. You just sat in the back of your station wagon. So yeah, sulfuric acid, if you haven't ever used it, it is so dangerous. It's unbelievably dangerous. And what happened was when this whole phosphine thing started, I leveraged that to get a small amount of seed money to study space missions that could go to Venus and search for signs of life. Well, that was during the pandemic summer, which you remember, as long as no one got sick, it was still a really tough time. At the time, I had a 17-year-old at home, and there were no jobs for kids. The sports fields were shut down. It was tough. So I put him, his name's Max, on the Venus project. But if any of you have kids or were a kid then, these kids are like digital natives. If you give them a project that has to do with the computer, it's done. Like he finished his project in 4 days. Yeah. So he pushed to do real experiments. So we found out in the pandemic summer, because remember, everything's closed. The university, it's kind of closed. We found out that you cannot order a large sulfuric acid bottle to your house. Yeah. But we found a little loophole, and I hope it still exists. You can order a lot of little bottles of sulfuric acid. So we set up a lab on the outside, like on our front porch, and he just wanted to experiment. So I want you to imagine you're a teenager again, and it's the hot pandemic summer, and you are on your porch. It's a day like today, and it's actually a lot like it is here. You're outside. What's the first thing you're going to put in sulfuric acid? Water, did someone say? Turns out water is also a bad thing to put in because water locks onto sulfuric acid and it gives off a lot of heat. Okay, let's get some answers here. Dirt. Okay, there's some very nice non-teenagers in the audience. You're a teenager. You're so bored.
You're gonna stick your finger in it, stir it.
Okay, no, okay. All right, I forgot to make, someone said they want to stick their finger in it and stir it. No. This is a safe laboratory, remember? And your mom is right there, so you're not going to do that. He is a teenager, but his mom's still nuts. There's paper. Food. Come on, let's get one more guess. He put a bug. Yeah, bug. An ant. Yeah, see? Yeah. He put an ant, and before I could say, please don't do that, that ant had a seizure and turned to goo. So that's why we think people think that life can't survive. And just to show you, I have this picture of me in I have a chemistry lab now. We're going to get there. And our DNA cannot survive in sulfuric acid. Our DNA has a sugar phosphate backbone, doesn't survive. The sugar molecule doesn't survive in sulfuric acid. So there's this canonical kind of iconic experiment where you, remember, don't try this on your front porch, but you have sugar. See the sugar in the bowl on the left? That's literally just sugar from like household sugar. And I have a jug of sulfuric acid. And we're going to watch together what happens to sugar and sulfuric acid. It's a proxy for DNA, which is a proxy for our life, all of our life. So now look what's happening. It's sped up to 2.5 times. So look, it's heating up. See the infrared on the right there? And you can see it turning color. And so now it's not looking good, is it? Remember, proxy for life, because we weren't going to redo the ant experiment and film it. No. Look what's happening. It's getting really hot, and now it's steaming. Water vapor and sulfuric acid are coming off of this. And we're actually losing almost everything except for carbon. And this weird kind of ball-like structure starts emerging. I always try to do it right. I just eyeball it now so it doesn't like totally overflow. But it's all in a fume hood and safe. But look at that, huh? So we think that because of this experiment, planetary scientists got locked into an idea that no life could ever survive in the atmosphere. And for some reason, no one really did much about this. A group of people kept the idea alive and kept working on it, but no one did real laboratory experiments. And we didn't want to be constrained by our own thinking. So what would you do? Well, we started to do experiments. And we found, now Max, my son, he by this time was in university studying biochemistry. And he did a project with my team, and he put our 20 biogenic amino acids in sulfuric acid. And with one exception, they are all stable. The backbone is stable. Half of them are chemically modified. They are all stable. We put not our DNA, but parts of our DNA, the latter, ACGT, adenine, guanine, etc., stable for a year or two. And right now, our goal is to find a DNA-like molecule, not our DNA, but swapping out parts to show that there can be complicated organic chemistry and informational containing molecules. So we can convince you, and you're looking very convinced, to go to Venus to search for signs of life. And I'm really proud to tell you that we have our first milestone towards that is a molecule called PNA, peptide nucleic acid. We didn't have to invent this, it already exists. And instead of a sugar phosphate backbone, it has a different type of backbone. And we have shown this molecule, a single strand of it, at room temperature is stable in concentrated sulfuric acid. And we have done so much work in the lab the last 5 years. We have shown some extended team members at another university. They put lipids with a polar head in sulfuric acid. And those are often put in water for the origin of life studies because they point their polar head out and they make little tiny spherical vesicles, kind of akin to a very, very primitive first step in making a cell membrane. Because our cell membrane is a rich tapestry of many things. This is just like one thing. Well, our colleagues put it in concentrated sulfuric acid, and here dyed it and looked at it under the microscope, and it's making these tiny, like tens of micron structures, these spherical vesicles. So this wasn't supposed to be the main part of the talk. And this is a lot of info. We're literally going out on a limb and putting out there a new paradigm for sulfuric acid as a potential solvent for life. And that started out to motivate the missions to Venus, but now it took on a whole life of its own. And in parallel, I'm proud to have started and running. We call ourselves the Morningstar missions to Venus. We used to call ourselves the Venus Lifefinder missions, but believe it or not, we had so much pushback from private donors, from people at NASA's not sponsoring it. It's too crazy for NASA or the European Space Agency. But the Morningstar missions to Venus, we are a series of missions. We want to go to Venus to search for signs of life, to look for complex organic chemistry. And I wanted to give you my entire talk about Venus, but I wanted to also talk about exoplanets. So you can come up afterwards or ask me during the talk. But we have our first mission in the series. We call it the Rocket Lab mission to Venus. It's mostly done by Rocket Lab. It's going to be this tiny probe that you see, the real probe here with its heat shield. We have a single instrument that's going to shine a laser out to measure backscattered polarized radiation and look for fluorescence. Today, actually, we have our second round of testing of the instrument. It's embedded in this large drone. It's going to fly around in Colorado. We have a lot going on for this first mission, and you can ask me more about it later. What we'd really like to do is send a balloon to Venus. You know, the former Soviet Union sent 2 balloons in the early 1980s, and the former Soviet Union and NASA have sent over a dozen probes combined into the atmosphere, but we haven't gone there for nearly 4 decades. So here you're just seeing a little cartoon of a balloon that would, entry vehicle would open up, a parachute would slow down the balloon so it can inflate as it's descending. And once the balloon inflates, it would rise a little bit, and we have our favorite altitude for where we want to survive. Now, this does get a bit complicated, and I didn't want to give you like a whole engineering talk. I just wanted you to mostly know we've been thinking about this. We have a lot of ideas. We've been working hard. And one of the most exciting parts of this mission is we actually have a strong Canadian contingent. We have myself being Canadian American. My program director, Jared Atkinson, lives in Calgary. And the person making our balloon, Maxim de Jong, is in Chilliwack, British Columbia. So I'd like you to see a version of our half-scale balloon that he's making for us, or made. And this balloon he's just flying it in British Columbia near his home. I just thought you'd enjoy some of these pretty pictures. It's a very special proprietary material, but the goal of this balloon is that it doesn't leak helium. Helium's a tiny molecule it wants to escape. And just a couple of weeks ago, or about a month ago, I guess, we were at an Explorers Club event in Ottawa at the Royal Canadian Geographical Society. We actually had that's a half-size balloon, a scaled-down engineering unit that Maxim brought out there to display. So to summarize this part of the talk, our mini mental break, remember, we went on a tangent to take a break from exoplanets, because it's so tricky to be sure there's a sign of life, that Venus clouds have the criteria for life. Liquid, the cloud particles made of sulfuric acid. It has energy from the sun and suitable temperatures. So I wanted you to have this kind of new thing to walk away with. But we are here, after all, to talk about exoplanets. So I'm not sure if you were thinking about this in the background. It's supposed to be a joke, but if you could mull that over, like, what are we going to do about it? Well, in those 5 years that I've been working on Venus, I have thought about it. I have talked to other people, and I just wanted to, there's good news and bad news, okay? Like, the good news is we think we can get there, but the bad news is going to take way longer than we thought, And if you want to think, like, how long did it take us to get a space telescope, Hubble? It took so long. Like, since the invention of the telescope way over 400 years ago, let's say it took 400 years to get our space telescope approximately, right? So it could be so long. It could be a long time. So one thing we could do is make incredibly detailed computer models of all possible exoplanet interiors and all the processes that could generate all the different gases. So we'd be able to say if we see a gas like phosphine or other gases like methyl chloride, or there's a huge list of them. And that would be incredibly insane. You don't have to read the details. I just flashed up like, wow, so many processes we would have to get our head around. This is so crazy. But I and a couple of other people, we're going to embark on this. And this is like a decade-long work or more, and it's going to be a long journey. Another idea is our new telescopes that we want to build. There's a giant telescope. This is even an out-of-date picture of it on the top right. The EELT, a 39 diameter meter mirror in Chile. We have Starshade is stalled out right now. We have lots of ideas. NASA's Habitable World Observatory may also stall out. The hope is that if we found an Earth twin, not one of these crazy planets around a red dwarf star, that we might have better hope in believing that if we see oxygen and a familiar environment, that it might be more likely to be a sign of life. We're not really sure. Another idea people like is to look for pollution, true pollutants that are so complicated, they can't be generated from a volcano or not. We call them technosignatures. This one still is a really bit dicey. So I will get to my final one that I love the most, actually. And these are new paradigms for new telescopes. Okay, your idea here in the corner. The one I love the most is on the top left. It is called the Solar Gravitational Lens Telescope. And this telescope would have to fly out to about 500 times the Earth-Sun distance. So its focal length would be 500 astronomical units. It would use our sun as the lens, as a gravitational lens, because mass bends space. And if we knew of our favorite planetary system, and we line up the telescope with the sun, like light rays that were normally going out like to outer space, they get bent around to you. It's like a giant refractor, basically. And if we could make this idea work, we could magnify the background planet by 10 billion. Like that, think about that. I know there's a lot of astroimagers here, and you're integrating, like, if you want to get something faint, I can imagine some of you are integrating all night. I mean, this is insane. Imagine if someone said, here's 10 billion times more photons. It would be absolutely crazy. And I really like that telescope. I put a summer student on it. It's mostly being developed in material science, because you need a giant solar sail. It's definitely in the future, and it is really far away. But I do think we're going to need to be able to get way more photons. We could, in that case, have like 1,000 by 1,000 pixels across the planet. So I think today we're going to find biosignature gas candidates. We will find planets. We will have flagged some of them of having unusual gases, but it will take a generation or 2 or 3 more until we have some new ways of looking at telescopes, till we have more sophisticated computer codes that we can really put it all together. So now I'm going to summarize. There's thousands of exoplanets. We live in a period of time where transits are the easiest way to find planets and to study their atmospheres. So it's all about transits. We talked about how we can see the transmission spectrum if we look for the planet changing in size as a function of wavelength, because sometimes that atmosphere is more absorbing than other wavelengths. We talked a lot about exoplanet signs of life. I did my best to give you like a very nuanced view of it, how it seems obvious because we can study atmospheres, we have a list of biosignature gases, but the reality is that the stars are contaminated with spots, and that even if we can reliably find a gas, we don't really know what the planet is made of, and it really complicates our efforts to try to know whether it's made by life or some non-life process. I talked about Venus. I just want you to know that it is a generations-long search. This is the beginning, but we have some shorter terms ideas of Venus and other solar system bodies to find signs of life or even life itself. Thank you very much for your attention today. And we do have time for questions, but I wanted you just to know what the 3 frontiers I was thinking of. It's exoplanets and their atmospheres. It is Venus and the possibility for life in the clouds, and it's new telescope paradigms. Okay.
Or I guess, back left.
All right. Yes.
When you're trying to sort out, different wavelengths between, between stars and their transiting planets, seems to me to be a problem that calls out for AI. Are you guys looking at ways of, applying huge amounts of data and letting artificial intelligence start to sort?
Yes, there's definitely, yeah. Yeah. The question is, because it's such a tangled problem with the stars contamination in the planet, it seems like a great case for AI. And yes, people are definitely trying to use AI to solve this problem. It's still tricky. Like, let's imagine the worst case scenario that it is not solvable because it's so tangled together, then AI can't help us. But yeah, people are trying AI. People are trying the observationally driven one. People are trying more deterministic methods, like identifying all the, believe it or not, new ways that the stars are variable due to active regions. And so we're trying everything.
Can you use the periodicity of the planet transit to help reduce some of the background noise?
The question is, can you use the periodicity of the planet transit to help reduce some of the background noise? Unfortunately, the stars seem to be changing, you know? I think there's some new thing our heads aren't understanding. Like if you study sunspots, they seem pretty stable. You know how our sun rotates and like some of them are still there, or they migrate in a certain way. We haven't solved that yet. And it seems like they're changing. There's a lot of little tiny ones. There's a lot of like micro flares. So it seems like so far, no, unfortunately.
Yeah, in your search, you're always looking for life forms that we know about, right? So we're looking at oxygen as this primary thing, but we have already discovered life forms on Earth that don't use oxygen. They use iron and sulfur and, you know, bacteria living in the hydrothermal vents at the bottom of the ocean under incredible temperatures and pressure. Yeah, we now know that there are some other life forces that have evolved under that condition.
Yes, the question is, how do we know there aren't some other life forms and they're not making oxygen? Like there's life at our deep sea floor that's not even using sunlight. They're using chemical energy gradients, not even heat. They're using something else. We don't know. I mean, that's a big problem. And there's a lot of life forms that would be inaccessible to our telescope observations. We are kind of passing on that question. That's the good thing about not being a student. We don't have to answer every question. And we just try to focus on not what is life, but what does life do? Life metabolizes. And we just have to understand and accept that most life we may never see. But if there is life, like on Earth, that's pumping out some kind of gas, whether it's methane or we literally have a list of lots and lots of molecules, dozens of molecules, or phosphine or oxygen, and I have a whole bunch of others. We're hoping to find a gas that is in such high quantities. So even though we don't understand or we're not trying to unpack what life is, I acknowledge what you said, and a lot of life we won't see. Yeah.
When we've noticed that when we analyze ice cores and that over the millions of years, the atmospheres have changed, the percentage of gases in that can that be used in a way to determine if there's a possible transition period, like where life may be forming and where it's transitioning?
The question is, we have from our ice cores or rock cores, we've seen that our atmosphere has changed so much. In fact, have you heard of snowball Earth, when people think almost our entire Earth was glaciated? I find that pretty terrifying, that just like a small change in certain parameters could send our planet in like that. It doesn't really help for exoplanets because we don't see them over a lot of time, but it does help because it's giving us different pictures. We don't just have one Earth, but we have like a lot of Earths. So we can try to use it in that way. Yes.
So, in Drake's equation, the limiting factor in the search for intelligent life was the time that our civilization would be looking while they were sending signals. And I'm wondering now, when we're looking for microbial life, is there a window that they need to be emitting their biosignatures? Is it a small window or is it a large window now that we can be looking
Okay.
at?
The question is that when Drake wrote his Drake equation, one of the limiting factors was time. Like how long is the intelligent civilization existing to send us radio signals? Is there a similar problem for microbes? We think the answer is no, because Earth, it looks like life started pretty soon. And some people think way before oxygen, that methane was being produced in large quantities. So we're hoping anyway that there's always some kind of life generating a gas. Yes. Yes.
When you say focus on, no, typically tend to focus on living life, but what about deceased life? We've had like 5 extinction events in the history of Earth. So, is there any chance that civilizations may have existed but have died out?
Absolutely. The question is on exoplanets, is there any chance that there are civilizations that may have died out? Absolutely. And people worry that we're going to be one of those. So yeah, I mean, there's a name for it. They call it the Great Filter. The Great Filter. Why haven't we heard from aliens? Either, they Well, the idea is that they kind of, well, the worry is that they all get to a certain level of intelligence and sort of self-destruct. So we wouldn't have any way to see that. But I can maybe, this is also a bad thing students do, which we don't recommend doing, is answer a different question, you know? So yeah, but let me answer a slightly different question. What if we are evolving into some kind of post-biological intelligence? Like we're all, and I'm not calling people out who are on their phone, but we're all addicted to our phones. You know, some of us may have like pacemakers, or like you have artificial limbs, or, you know, and we see AI right now. And you know how AI, you read about in the news, like we're having large computer facilities that are using so much energy and generating heat. Some people think our next step is to send our computers to space. They'll get all the sunlight, they'll dissipate their heat into outer space. And maybe it's not too far-fetched to see us in 1,000 years being the computers in outer space. So there's that. So some people, rather than thinking there's an extinct civilization we can't see, want to look for where we may be headed.
Your role for the new Vera Rubin observatory, for example, to discover new exoplanets? Like, are you optimistic about that?
Yes, the question is, will the new Vera Rubin observatory detect exoplanets? You know, Vera Rubin telescope is not designed for exoplanets, so it may not actually, because it's designed to look at very faint things and to look at the whole sky as rapidly as possible. Whereas in exoplanets, we need to drill down on like a specific object, or we need like a long time period for transits to discover them. So it hasn't been, but that said, I'm sure people will use it. All the data is archived, all the data will be available. I'm sure people will have clever ways to try to find exoplanets.
Is there gonna be a quiz after?
Yeah. Yeah, if you'd like a quiz, well, we can have a quiz after. Sure. Yeah.
Can you expand on the the block, the one that's going up the shield? What was it?
Oh, the Starshade. Yeah.
Starshade.
So, you know how we talked about TRAPPIST-1, or the planets around the M dwarf star, and how they're just so different from Earth? I call them Earth cousins. We really want to find a true Earth twin. We want to find a planet like Earth orbiting the sun, and it's so hard. And the best way we think to do it is to go to space, because transits have to be just aligned, so, you know, and it's not going to work for Earth. I already explained that. We'd like to go to space and block out the starlight so we can see an exoplanet directly. And you asked about Starshade, which is a mission concept where the telescope and Starshade could launch together. And Starshade has these petals that would unfurl from their stowed position, and they would snap into place, making Starshade, which is a giant specially shaped screen that is tens of meters in diameter. And it would have its own spacecraft, and it would formation fly from the telescope tens of thousands of kilometers. It's like blocking out the sun so you can see stuff around it. It has to block out the starlight so only planet light enters the telescope. And it's so hard to find another Earth this way. Our Earth is 10 billion times fainter than our sun. So we have to block out the starlight so perfectly. It's insane. And Starshade is one of the ideas. There's other ideas too. And this whole field is kind of stalling out, actually, because it's just so challenging to do. And so we just have to kind of wait and see where NASA goes, what the community really wants to do. And so far, NASA has its next flagship that is a couple decades away, called Habitable World Observatory. It may have a Starshade, it may not. It'll have a device called a coronagraph, but that's what Starshade is. Yes?
Is ever been able to actually image the surface of an exoplanet in any detail?
Can we ever image the surface? Yep. These cannot. These are just separating out the planet and star, and the planet will just be a point source. If we could, still a point source, yeah. We would need the Solar Gravitational Lens Telescope, and that would get it would get so many photons, it would be able to spatially resolve to say 1,000, but in fact, you can pick the number of pixels you want. You could have 1,000 by 1,000 pixels. I got fixated because I'd rather have the 10 billion. If I have 10 billion, I've got to divide that by 1,000 by 1,000, which is a million. Yeah, so we could divide it however we wanted. It would be amazing. Now we're still, if we had infinite amounts of money, we're still about 20 years away from being able to build that telescope. And it will take 20 years to get to that. And we still don't quite know how to build it and how to get there. But if we could do all that, I mean, 40 years sounds like a lot. We'll be, yeah. But I just, we'll be older, but We'll be older, but remember Hubble, we went from, the first telescope to the first airplane to Hubble. I mean, it takes time for these things, but there is hope to do it one day. Yes.
Why the petal shape on that shade?
Why the petal shape on the shade? Well, light can act like a wave, and I'll let you watch this movie while we go through it again. It's diffraction around the edges. I want you to think of light acting like a wave. You know how if you drop a pebble in a pond, you'll see ripples because water's a wave and the pebble is distorting it. Well, it turns out that light will bend around. If we wanted to imagine a circle or a square in space, light will bend around the outside of the circle or square and it'll create ripples. And those ripples are like 100,000 times brighter than the planet you're looking for. So Starshade is a very special shape. So the light waves interact with themselves and they cancel themselves out. And by the way, we'll give a shout out to Charles, my husband, who I met in the RASC. He actually described it like this. He said, it's like dropping a pebble in a pond, and all of a sudden the pond is perfectly smooth. Not a single ripple, because all the ripples are pushed to the outside edges. So it's like the light waves interact with these petals, and it's perfectly smooth, except you've sent your wave somewhere else. Yep. Okay.
All right. I'm actually not going to do the thank you. I'm going to call on Tony, our president, to come
Okay,
back.
thank you.
Do the official thank you, but I will say thank you on my behalf. That's amazing.
Sarah, thank you. On behalf of Halifax Center, I'd like to offer our deepest thanks for coming and sharing your time and your knowledge with us. It's much appreciated. If there's extraterrestrial life out there, I sure hope they're as gracious with their time and knowledge as you've been with us. I have a small gift for you that hopefully accept as a token of your time and appreciation, and maybe serve as a little memoir of your time with us today. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
You've been a great audience. Thank you again. And I'm just going to, because it's my computer.
So now we have Paul Heath with Food for the Soul.
Hey, see, we got a few new faces here. Basically, what my poems are is a reflection on the topic of the day. But I try to get you to look at that topic outside of the science, how it affects you, how we see things. So my Food for the Soul poems are basically the science outside the box. So, breath. We scan the vastness, seek the gray mist upon the gray expanse, a silhouette that hides a twinkle's brief flicker. We sweep the vastness, seek the faintest breath on distant skies, thin lines, the hidden shape of the warmth behind. Wide eyes into the void we've tossed, seeking shadows aligned, and prismed eyes to mark faint lines of hidden breath on distant skies. And soon to block light's potential life-giving glare, a hand will stretch upon the void to mark faint lines from glimmerings misaligned. We seek within the vast sea of stars that faintest trace of lifted breath, the breath of life on far, far distant shores. So I think I got most of what she talked about. And I always encourage people to look at how astronomy affects you, especially when I'm doing the teaching for kids and at library talks and that. I always said, well, when you look up, how does that make you feel? And a lot of us, there's always been that wow moment. And if you can get people to recognize that wow moment, we'll get more people more students for Sarah to teach. So just encourage more people in. Okay, thank you.
Lovely. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Again, I want to extend our greetings from the board to the Dalhousie Astronomy Society and to the SMU students who are here today. Welcome. Good to see you. We hope that we can build and collaborate with you folks in terms of our knowledge, our expertise, and especially your growing knowledge in the new technologies that some of us older folk are not really that privy to. So hopefully we can share some of that information. First up, I'd like to acknowledge the fund that we have started, thanks to the very generous Michelle Lane and Tony Schellink. They provided dollars for us to be able to provide an endowment fund to ensure that our observatory does in fact go on into perpetuity. We have a matching fund of $10,000 to reach. So we're hoping that the members out there and anyone else, and certainly who would like to contribute to us being able to continue with our St. Croix Observatory, and that's a picture of it that you see there, an aerial view with the roll-off, the warm room, and the storeroom / washroom in the trees. It's a beautiful site and it's beautiful dark sky, and we hope to keep continuing that. So if you feel like you can contribute to it, please do. We'd welcome it. Our center has a 5 times a year newsletter called Nova Notes. This is the previous edition from May, June. It's Mary Lou Whitehorn's painting of a sunset. And thanks to the work of Lisa Ann Fanning and John McPhee, it gets put out, like I said, 5 times a year, but it has lots of stuff in it. Everything from messages from our president and from the editors themselves to promotion of events that we have. There has been there's been 5 parts so far of a 6-part series regarding the asteroids that have names or are attributed to Nova Scotia people and places. And there's a members universe. There's also a article that David puts out regarding the moon lunar features that's out in every edition. So it's well worth reading. If members have a book review, photographs, some special event that they're putting on, astronomically speaking, you have until October 20th to submit your articles to Lisa Ann, because then by the end of the month is when the September-October issue comes out. So keep that date in mind. And you can send it to Novi's editor at halifax.rasc.ca. Our observing nights. You've met Tony. He came up and thanked Sarah earlier. He's our president, but he also happens to be our SCO manager, our St. Croix Observatory manager. And he has set up several months, hoping you can read them there, because with my eyes this close, I can't read them. But nonetheless, if you go to our website, which is halifax.rasc.ca, and you go onto our main, and look under observing, you will see the list of dates. And of course, our next date coming up is October 21. If there are any cancellations, whatever, we are notifying folks on this site, because as you noticed before, when they put the woods ban on us, our last observing session had to be canceled. There are other nights that we do acknowledge, like David just acknowledged a few moments ago about the Observe the Moon. When there are special nights such as that, or we had an urban star party held just this last weekend. So when we have those events, they are acknowledged as well. And this is one, the RASC Awards. The national body has several awards for various and sundry reasons, astronomical communication, all sorts of things there. There are the various awards that are listed. The criteria for these awards and how to nominate someone for these awards is on the national website, and it's cited there at the rasc.ca/RASC Awards. So you can find how to nominate someone. If you know of someone in our center that should be nominated for any one of these awards, just look around at all the people that are in our center and what they have contributed to us here and nationally as well. If you can think of someone, please do look at the criteria for it, and please go forward and nominate. There's also observing awards, certificates, actually. Anybody can apply for the first one mentioned there, Explore the Universe. These are all online that you can download the program for. And keep in mind, anybody can complete them. So if you want to do the Deep Sky Challenge, download it, complete it. The unfortunate part is unless you are a member of the RASC, you will not receive the certificate and pin, except for the Explore the Universe one. That is for everybody. General public, amateur astronomers, whoever wants to complete it, go for it. I do encourage members to do these programs because it does get you familiar with the night skies and it challenges you. And even experienced astronomers get that oh wow moment because they're discovering things through the use of these programs. So I strongly encourage you to do that. We know, whoop, not working. All right. For the astro imagers in the group, and as you saw from early on in the presentation today, there are several. There are 3 categories of astro imaging certificates, again, for RASC members. The wide field, the deep sky, and the solar system. You can apply. They all have criteria for them. You can go ahead and fill that in. And this is the national program. Now, keeping in mind, our center also has astro imaging, but we have an award for our center. And we have an astrophotography contest that does include those 3 criteria, the deep sky, the solar system, the wide field. They are identical to those of national. But to apply to receive the award for best in those fields, you have to be a member of the RASC. And for those of you that aren't RASC members, you have to reside in the province. So anybody in this room who resides in Nova Scotia can take those photographs and apply for this award. And each of those have winners, but we also have something called the People's Choice, which means all the photos that are submitted are sent out to the members and they say, okay, which one do you think is the best one of all of them? And from that, the people decide who that overall winner is. And just to give you an idea, oops, sorry, I'm going to go back. The poppy is there to remind you that that's the deadline for submission. Remembrance Day, November 11. Okay, so if you want to submit photographs, I mean, you had a beautiful summer to be able to take your images, please submit them by November 11th. And all the information is on our website under imaging. And just to give you an idea of what the winners were last year, there's the Deep Sky from Jerry Black, the Solar System from David Hoskin. I only showed you 1 of 2. David had a tie with 2 of his photographs for that category. Jeremy Kuzub with his wide field, and the People's Choice was Jason Dane with his comet as well as the Milky Way. So you can see the variety of types of photographs that there are. So if you're interested, please do join us and submit your photograph. Now comes down to the business. I know that governance is not exactly an exciting place for most people, except for people like me who like policy and all that sort of nonsense. But we do have a revised position description for our National Council representative due to some changes with the terms of reference nationally with the National Council. So there are some pieces there. What you would do is you again go into our website and About Us, and you'll see position descriptions, and that's where you'll find it. The other new thing, and this is new, brand new, is a policy regarding education and public outreach, or EPO events, so that if there is an approved EPO, RASC EPO event, you can apply for expenses if you so choose. And again, it's under the same menu item, but it's in policy documents. Our elections are coming up at the AGM. I want to notify members that, in essence, all positions are up for grabs. Okay, the current board may reoffer, but if you are interested in any one of those positions, the president, the vice president, secretary, treasurer, or any one of the 6 director positions, please let us know. I mean, heaven forbid we should have an election. Okay, so if you are interested, please come forward. Again, I should have put a pumpkin here because the deadline is Halloween. Okay. The appointments, there are several appointments that also have to be made to committee chairs and SCO manager and webmaster, but these appointments are made by the new board, the incoming board, so they are not select or appointed until the 1st January meeting of 2026. However, the deadline for nominations is at the AGM, which is being held on December 6th. So if you would like to have your name forwarded or know of someone that should be nominated for any one of those positions, please let us know by those dates. Also, we have a center board of directors. As you know, you've met Tony as our president. By the way, I'm secretary of our organization. You can reach Tony at president@halifax.rasc.ca. For those members here and in Zoom land, if there is anything that you feel that we should be addressing here locally in our center, please contact Tony and let us know. Okay, we represent you. We're there to work for you, and without you providing us input as to what you feel needs to be done, could be done, should be done, we're working in what they call an ivory tower. So we really do need to hear from the boots on the street. Okay. National Council is the organization nationally. Oh yes, and our next board meeting is the 28th of October. So if you have anything before then, that's great. And if it occurs to you after the 28th, that's great too. Still contact Tony. The National Council meets 5 times a year, and it is a body at the national level that is represented by all 30 centers. Each center is allowed 1 representative per 200 members. So as an example, we have 1 rep, and that's me for our center. But big centers like Toronto, for instance, can have up to 4 members because of the numbers that they have. But the center, and as I say, may have. Toronto chooses to only have 2, and that's their choice. But that's how, and we are an advisory body to the board. We work in collaboration with them to strengthen the collaboration, communication, and the transparency so that we can both figure out from us at this level as well as the national level how best the organization can go forward and address challenges at both levels. And our next meeting for the National Council is October 19. I mentioned about the beauty of wanting to collaborate with various groups, with the universities, and also John Reed is here today too from Stargaze, Nova Scotia, and he is having a special event out at his place out on the Prospect Road on the 17th with the cloud dates of the 18th and 19th, and it's a binocular event. So for those of us that or those of you, I started with binoculars, so I can't say I'm not familiar, but for those that aren't familiar with using binoculars, this would be a great thing to go to. You'd be surprised what you can find with binoculars instead of a telescope. And it's an incredible site, so you can get tickets. Don't think there's a fee, is there, John? No, it's free, but you do have to have tickets because there's limited space available.
Oh,
So,
it's not, it's basically the cost of a book. So there are tickets.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a free book because it's our book place.
There you go. So for those of us in the room, if you have questions, the man who's organizing it is sitting right there, John Reed. Thanks, John. So our next meeting here is on November 1st and in person. And of course, those of you in Zoom land, you'll still be invited to attend that way. But Pat Kelly, who's a fellow of the RASC, will be talking about telling time in Scotland from stones to sundials. And this is based on his recent trip to Scotland. So it'll be an interesting talk come November 1st. So everyone's welcome to come back. There will be no tickets, but just know that on November 1st, in this same place, same time, Pat will be talking about that. And there's just one more thing that I discovered early this morning that I thought I'd bring to everyone's attention because I don't know if everyone knew about this. This is World Space Week from October 4 to October 10. Now, why those 2 dates? Because on October 4 of 1950, I've got to check my notes here, sorry. 1957, I want to say. Yeah, was the first time that man went into space with the launch of the Sputnik 1. So that was the start of our World Space Week. On October 10 in 1967, there was a world treaty, the Outer Space Treaty was signed. So hence the date, start and finish dates of World Space. So a happy World Space Week, okay? So on that, I thank you all, and any questions, I'll take them.
Okay, so to end off things, we'll have a look at what's up in the sky for October. Before I start, I just wanted to mention that last Saturday we had a public outreach event at Harry DeWolf Park, and it was quite successful. We had 7 or 8 members out there with their telescopes and snagging people walking by, and there's a lot of oohs and ahs from the members of the public that came and looked through eyepieces or looked at images on tablets. So we hope to have these sorts of things more frequently. So just stay tuned for announcements. So October, what do we have in October? Well, everyone knows the days are getting a lot shorter. So it gets dark early, which is good for observing and imaging. Sunset a few days ago, at the start of the month, was 6:54. And by the end of the month, it'll be 6:04. Of course, we'll be going back to standard time in November, so that's going to shift those times a bit, but it won't change the fact that it's getting dark early. This is the sun today. Few sunspots. These groups are particularly active. They have the energy for M-class solar flares. We had a couple kind of surprise nights over the last week for Northern Lights. I don't know if anyone was able to see any, but if you're in a dark site, I saw pictures from New Brunswick and a few from Nova Scotia, the South Shore. They were very short-lived. It was basically a coronal hole that was the reason for them. But if you caught them within I guess it was less than a half hour that they were really apparent, you had a nice show, and maybe we'll get something from these active sunspots. The moon this month. Well, we're coming up on the full moon, the Mate Calling moon on October 7th. There's lots of interesting things in the sky. The moon will be near Saturn tonight if the clouds don't interfere. And through the month, you'll be able to see the moon near the Seven Sisters, near Jupiter, near Venus. The Orionite meteor shower peaks on the 21st, but it's actually already started. And last night, I just coming back from walking the dogs, I saw a very bright meteor from Halifax. The new moon, October 21st, is the animal fattening moon. So just to bring some things to your attention then, tonight, if you look at, the clouds don't get in the way, if you look at the nearly full moon with 15 by 70 binoculars, you'll be able to see the moon and the same field of view, Saturn. On the 9th, this is always a really nice view. The waning gibbous moon and the Seven Sisters, again in the same field of view with 15 by 70 binoculars. The 14th, the moon and Jupiter will be in the same field of view, but you'll have to go for a wider field of view using 7 by 50 binoculars. And towards the end of the month, on the 19th, the waning crescent moon here will be close to Venus. And this one you have to get up early, well, relatively early for. So 6:30 in the morning. This is the field of view in binoculars, in 7 by 50 binoculars. Now, Venus is actually not at a crescent stage. It's at its nearly full disk, so you don't get to see 2 crescents in the night sky, but still nice to see. And at the end of the month, on the 24th, just after sunset, you'll be able to see a very thin crescent moon and the crab globular cluster and Antares. Again, in 7x50 binoculars. 27th to 31st is the best time to try to, if you're doing explore the universe or explore the moon, you can meet some of the objectives for different craters and different mare around the terminator, this point of view. So shadows provide lots of nice contrast. And the Orinids, again, peaking on the 21st, but they've already started. At the peak, you can expect to see 20 to 30 meteors per hour from a dark site. And the source of this particular meteor shower is Halley's Comet. Best time to look for the Orinids on the 21st is between midnight and dawn, and this is the time of the full moon, the new moon, so there won't be any moon to interfere with your ability to see some of the fainter meteors. The one that I saw last night had a really long trail. It was quite impressive. All right. Couple things of note. There are two comets now currently in our skies that you'll be able to see over the coming days. Comet C2025A6 Lemon is currently visible. I showed you a picture that Jeff Donaldson took of it earlier. The maximum predicted magnitude for this particular comet is 4.8, and you can see that it's currently moving through Lynx and then through Ursa Major. It's going to be pretty close to the horizon by the middle of the month, so the best time to look is going to be around the 10th probably. And as someone mentioned earlier, it is currently visible in binoculars from a dark sky site. Okay. So the other comet to keep an eye out for, and I've seen lots of nice pictures of this from the southern hemisphere. This is C2025R2 Swan. So if you look southwest, close to the horizon between up to October 18th, about an hour after sunset, you'll be able to see this particular comet. It's been near Mars, so this is here's the 29th. So Mars is very low on the horizon, but it's currently moving through Libra, and then sideswiping Antares, and then by the middle of the month, getting higher into Ophiuchus. So the maximum predicted magnitude for this comet's 9.1. So you're going to need telescope or binoculars to see it. It put on quite a show in the southern hemisphere. Okay, planets this month. Mercury is visible, but really low in the west just after sunset. So you'll need really almost a perfect western horizon. So if you're out on the Bay of Fundy, for example, looking out over the bay, that would be a good place to catch Mercury. Venus is still very prominent in the morning sky. Mars, very low in the west. Again, you'll need a really good horizon. And there's a conjunction with Mercury on the 20th. Jupiter rises around midnight, and there are several Galilean moon shadow transits throughout the month. So check the Observer's Handbook to get dates and times for those if you want to see them or image them. Saturn's very well placed for observing. It rises in the east just after sunset, and you can see it for most of the night. Uranus is in the east again after sunset, potentially a good binocular target. And Neptune will be in Pisces all month long. Oops. I'm just getting the click.
Sometimes it just gets,
Gets lost. So this is the Mercury Mars conjunction just after sunset on the 20th of October. See them right here, really close to the horizon, and that's why I indicate this is a challenge object. You still have time to look for zodiacal light. The best time this month is going to be October 20th to the 26th, so there won't be any moon in the sky to interfere with the faint pyramidal projection of the zodiacal light. It's a challenge because you have to get up fairly early, 5:30 to 6 a.m. is recommended, and you'll be able to see the sunlight reflecting off dust in the plane of the ecliptic. If you haven't done this yet, this is a good month to look for the dimming and brightening of Algol in Perseus as a result of this double star system, the orbits of the two stars causing the main star to dim and then get brighten again. And this time you can do it all in a period of an evening. So Algol will be at its dimmest at 9:30 on the 15th, and then if you go in and have a coffee, watch a movie, and step out after midnight at 2:20, you'll see that it's brightened. Okay, explore the universe. We're into autumn constellations. Pegasus, Andromeda, Cassiopeia, Perseus, and Aries. And all of these constellations you'll be able to see from the city, or at least I can see it from Clayton Park. Autumn stars. Key one is to look for is Mirfak. These are stars that the SynScan application uses for star alignment, so it's good to know what these stars are and where to find them. Shidar is another good one in Cassiopeia. The autumn deep sky object for October is Melot 20, also known as the Alpha Persei cluster. And this is an easy one to find. You find Perseus, you look for the bright star Mirfak in Perseus, and around that star is this particular open star cluster. We were looking at this at the barbecue at SCO with binoculars, and it was really stunning. That open cluster. And the double star for this month is Alpha 1 and Alpha 2 Capricorni. This is an optical double, which means that the two stars aren't gravitationally linked. From our point of view, they just appear to be close together. Alpha 2 Capricorni is a yellow giant, and Alpha 1 is a yellow supergiant. So a pretty easy one to find with binoculars. And that's it for what's up in the October night sky. Any questions?
I will comment, the moon is always, always up, but it's up there quite frequently, so if you want to observe the moon.
It's true.
Most nights of the month.
Yeah, you can observe it. That's right.
It is.
Okay, if there's no questions, I'll thank everyone for attending and hope to see you in a month's time at the November meeting.